Hey, I want to welcome you back to the Jamie Summers Mini Podcast. Today is going to be a little different. It's going to be a little bit more real time and a little more physical than usual because it is insane how one pulled muscle can put your brain on high alert for 2 straight weeks, and that can turn into a perspective that we're going to sift through together today. So, about 2 weeks ago, I done hurt my knee standing up from the kitchen table. Like, are we at that age? I don't know. Like, it's so wild. I literally think that I pulled a muscle, or at least that's what I'm hoping it is. And if you know me, you know that my non negotiables are 3 strength training days a week, 2 dance fitness days a week. And my dance fitness days are the days that I don't have to talk myself into showing up for. Like, I look forward to those workouts because I get to check the world at the door. I get to get lost in the music and I get to get around some incredible, amazing people. And looking at that, it's the thing that I enjoy the most when it comes to my exercise regimen. Like, don't get me wrong, I love my deadlift days, I love my back squat days, but I honestly have more times than not talking myself into showing up in the garage gym than driving 15 and 20 minutes to go to a dance fitness class. Make it make sense? I don't know. But you know what? Matt told me many, many years ago, Jamie, if you only do what you need to do when you feel like it, you will never be successful. And he said that with the most loving perspective. And it's something that I have kept in my back pocket because it's so freaking true. If we only do what we need to do when we feel like it, my friend, well, we're not going to be successful because I hate to break it to you. We're not always going to feel like doing the things that we need to do. Like motivation, it jumps out the door really, really quick. So let's talk about kind of how this whole perspective came about. So my first class back was actually last Wednesday. And to be honest, my knee wasn't ready. I actually ended up leaving a little bit early. And the part that I really started to think about as I was walking out of that gym, saying some adult words in my head because I was so mad, it wasn't just not being able to show up for my dance fitness classes. It affected my mindset at home, right? The days leading up to, getting in the car and driving back to the gym, I realized walking down the stairs, my mind wasn't on my day. It wasn't on what I was doing. I was so hyper focused on my knee with every step that I took. I'm thinking I need to protect it. I don't twist it. Don't make it worse. Don't push it. And that's when it hit me. How much of our life we just quietly assume that is just going to always work how it always has worked. Like input my knees at this point, right? Because that's what we're talking about. But I don't think about my knees when I was doing my daily 5 and my weekly 1, my cleaning, I don't think about them when I'm making coffee or saying goodbye to Matt in the morning or cooking dinner or hell, even at dance fitness prior to pulling a muscle. Never thought about them. They just work. I just assume that they're always going to be getting me through what they've always gotten me through. And you assume that until they don't. And then suddenly they're the only thing that you can think about. We take so much of what always is for granted so easily. The parts of our life, our body, our systems that are just quietly working in the background, holding everything together. And we don't notice how much they actually do until you pull a muscle or until something's standing in the way between what we want to do and what we actually are doing. And maybe for you, it isn't knee pain. It isn't literally knee pain. Maybe it's a completely different obstacle altogether. Maybe for you, it is taking that very first step past your starting line that you placed in front of you, whether that's walking into the gym for the first time and having that mindset of, oh my gosh, everyone's looking at me. Everybody knows what they're doing. I don't know what I'm doing. So we allow it to stall us in showing up to figure it out without realizing that, you know what, everybody in that gym had a day one that probably walked through the same exact mindset. And that is where we need to push ourselves through to get to the other side of that. Yes, like you don't know what's waiting on the other side. We've talked about this multiple times, right? So we can't compare our chapter 1 to somebody's chapter like 101. Or maybe it's just the fear of starting something new, pivoting from a path that you've always done and you want to try something else. And being bad at it before you get good at it, my friend, is part of the dang process. Or maybe you're on the other side of this podcast listening and saying, you know what, my body doesn't move the way that it used to. Maybe I have an old injury that I never fully healed from, and I flinch every single time I try. So I don't load the bar as much as I probably could because I'm allowing something from the past to hold me back. And sometimes that's valid and sometimes that's not valid, right? That is something that I think that we need to be more hyper focused on getting ourselves through. So no matter what, the thing that is quietly standing between where you are and where you want to be, I think a lot of us treat that thing like it's the reason to wait. It's the reason to stall. It's the reason why we can't do something instead of letting it be the thing that we work through, that we grow through, information to work with so that we can get ourselves further. See, too many times in our life, we let one setback set us back more than it actually should. We use it as the excuse for why we can't show up instead of asking what we can actually still do. We assume that the pain associated with the one thing is automatically going to be the pain in everything. And, well, we just completely stall ourselves out. We look for it to be the reason why we can't instead of the reason why we need to look for the motivation for why we should. Because here's the thing, I didn't stop. I pushed past that knee pain because I needed to realize that maybe the thing that is going to get in my way is the pivots and the quick moves and the dance fitness. But what about hitting my strength training? Like, is my knee going to hurt for that? I could have just assumed that it would. But no, I didn't. I adjusted. I paid attention. I decided I need to give myself a little break from dance fitness, which was good to do. That is not me giving up on my non-negotiables. That is me adjusting, right? That's me meeting myself where I'm at instead of where I wish I could be, which would be dancing in the class. I didn't discredit the things that I was still able to do, right? I still showed up in the garage gym, rocked out my strength training. And oddly enough, my friend, my knee was absolutely fine with just a couple modifications. Like instead of focusing on the frustration of my knee holding me back from dance, pivoting in gratitude that I could still show up and do my back squats, my deadlifts, my rows. And honestly, I finally had a legitimate excuse to skip Bulgarian split squats. If you know, you know, those are the worst. But there's always going to be 3 lines in our life: where we were, where we are, and where we want to go. And I heard this from, I think his name is Stephen Ferntick, many, many years ago. And it's something that I've always kept in my back pocket because I loved it. And the thing is that so many of us get hung up in the gap between where we are and where we want to go. What we get hung up on is the frustration. And he called it the frustration gap. But if we take a huge step back and look at where we were compared to where we are, we got to have a lot of gratitude for that, right? And that's going to help shift your perspective, not in frustration, but in growth. A lot of growth comes when we can focus on the gratitude. See, sometimes in life, we do need to slow down in order to speed up. So next time you catch yourself being frustrated, whether it's with, a legitimate knee pain, your progress, wherever you are stuck, don't just look forward. Don't live life in that frustration gap. That's got to be the shift. Like, it's not about pushing harder sometimes where you want to go. It's just actually seeing where you already are when we need to slow down to speed up. So I've said it for years. Those that I've had the honor to coach, you need to know the difference between pushing yourself too far and pushing yourself through. Slowing down to speed up, gratitude over frustration. That is what will build that quote unquote knee back up, right? So I think that it is important to know, like, whatever that thing is, maybe it is an old injury that you are trying to push yourself through. I've been there. All 2019, I lived life in KT tape. And when I tell you that it held my mindset in a spot for a good amount of time, that I couldn't load that bar. I could not push more weight in my back squat because of the fear that I just didn't have the confidence in my knee that I was able to do it. Right. So I think that when we have something in our life that is legitimate pain, legitimate injury, a legitimate stumbling block, we need to take a step back instead of sitting in frustration where we can live in our excuses and not push ourselves through. We need to take a good step back and be like, okay, let me do what I can with where I'm at, with what I have, and how am I going to work myself through this so that I can keep growing in my life. That is the ask. That is what we should be focusing on, because it's going to be no fun to sit in the frustration pool of life, like with a gimp knee, right? Like, I need to be able to show up and do the things that I can do. And I've said it for years. It's always better to do something than nothing, right? So we're never going to get better if we don't know the difference between pushing ourselves through and pushing ourselves too far. So keep that in mind. But looking at the 3 lines and taking that huge step back and standing in the gratitude for the perspective that, you know what, we can't always assume that everything is always going to work the way that it once worked, right? We need to make pivots in our life. We need to also have gratitude for the things that just quietly work in the background, like my knees, and never even gave it a second thought that I'm going to have an injury that is going to keep me away from the things that I want to do. So instead of leaning so much into the frustration, I think catching ourselves with, all right, what can I do in order to get myself back is important. So next time you catch yourself in that frustrated mindset, whether it is a legitimate injury that you are pushing yourself through, your progress, wherever you are stuck in your mindset, choose not to be frustrated. Choose to look beyond the frustration and use that frustration as the motivation to get yourself through, to grow through it. And don't just look forward to where you want to go. You have to look back in gratitude for where you were to where you are, right? And realizing that the version of you before this started is going to get you through the version of you that's going to get through it, right? So with all of that being said, that's got to be the shift, right? Knowing all of that is, I think, something that we don't always slow down to focus on. And walking out of the gym last Wednesday early, even though I had some adult words, I had some great perspective of gratitude for where I was at in my life, right? The strength that I have, the mindset that I have, and the realization that I am not going to allow this knee to hold me back in other aspects of my life. There are things that I can do, and there are things that I will do in order to get my knee back to where I need it to be, because your girl needs her dance fitness in her life. So with that, just know the difference between pushing yourself too far and pushing yourself through. That is so important. And slowing down to speed up, gratitude over frustration. That is where you are going to build back up. So know yourself, know your 3 lines in your life, and always, always put your yes first, my friend, because if you don't, who will? All right, we'll see you next week. You have a amazing day.